Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the session that we're hosting today entitled Curbside San Diego, Community Resilience During COVID-19. We want to thank the County of San Diego for having us today at the Live Well Conference. And this is a presentation in partnership between Circulate San Diego and the Downtown San Diego Partnership. So today we have an amazing speaker set up, and I want to introduce everyone on the panel today. So starting us off, our first speaker is Danielle Berger. Danielle is the Director of Planning at Circulate San Diego, and Danielle manages a team of planning professionals. Her work focuses on sustainable development and increasing livability through active transportation, recreational access, and event programming. Our next speaker is Sean Warner, the Director of Community Enhancement through the Clean and Safe program with the Downtown San Diego Partnership. Sean is responsible for overseeing the Downtown San Diego Business Improvement District, Commercial Enhancement Program, and charitable foundations, as well as neighborhood placemaking and activations. Sean's team spearheaded the development of the Curbside San Diego initiative. Myself, Jane Schwartz, I'm one of your moderators today, as well as Angelica Rocha. And Angelica is a planner with Circulate San Diego and manages planning, policy, and marketing projects. And Angelica is assisted with all Curbside San Diego projects and overseeing the promotion of these efforts through social media and press coverage. I've also had the privilege of helping out with the Curbside San Diego projects, and I serve as a project manager with Circulate San Diego. One of my biggest contributions has been the assistance with the Achilles pilot project, which we'll be going over on today's presentation. So I want to go over an outline for our presentation today so that you feel comfortable with what we're going to be talking about, because some of you might have seen Curbside San Diego and you don't know what it is, or you've seen us in the news and you want to learn more, which is always fantastic. So today we will look specifically at the evolution of the Curbside San Diego initiative and the role that the Downtown San Diego Partnership and Circulate San Diego played and continues to play in the transformation of public right-of-way for the greater good of businesses and residents. We will learn about each organization and quickly recap the timeline of COVID in the context of Curbside San Diego. And we'll then hear from each of our speakers and how they describe the Curbside San Diego initiative and each organization's role. Speakers will go into detail about Curbside San Diego using specific examples about the program. Finally, we will discuss current activities and what the future of Curbside San Diego looks like and our public right-of-way beyond and into the near future. At this time, I do want to remind you that we would love to hear your comments, and we are going to reserve time at the end of the presentation for a Q&A. So go ahead and enter your questions into the Q&A section or even the chat box, and we will be collecting those and answering as many as we can before the presentation is done. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Angelica to describe our next slide.
All right, so first we wanted to introduce the Curbside San Diego initiatives and the organizations involved. Curbside San Diego is an initiative of the Downtown San Diego Partnership and 12 other community business, mobility, industry, and environmental organizations. Curbside is a program to support downtown's ground floor eateries and retail stores as they recover from the COVID-19 pandemic by allowing creative and flexible use of streets, sidewalks, and parking for outdoor dining, seating, and designated waiting areas. The Downtown San Diego Partnership, who is represented today by Sean Warner, manages and oversees this initiative, and Circulate San Diego, Jana, Danielle, and I are all representing, have assisted through the implementation of curbside projects and help write the policy letter to the mayor to get this initiative off the ground. A little bit of background about the two organizations is that the Downtown Partnership serves as the leading advocate for economic vitality and cultural vibrancy in downtown San Diego. They are a member-based nonprofit organization with nearly 400 members, representing a variety of business sectors, including real estate, technology, banking, law, defense, insurance, communications, energy, and tourism. Circulate San Diego is a regional organization formed through the merger of Move San Diego and Walk San Diego. Circulate San Diego is one of the county's leading organizations dedicated to advancing mobility and making the region a better place to live, work, learn, and play. Our work focuses on creating great mobility choices, more walkable and bikeable neighborhoods, and land use that promotes sustainable growth. And I'll kick it back to Jana.
Thank you. So as we lead up to describing more about Curbside San Diego, and that was a great introduction of what it is as an initiative, thank you, Angelica. We did want to just do a really brief overview of the origin story of Curbside San Diego in the context of COVID-19. Obviously, we're all very familiar with COVID-19, but we want to quickly review the timeline because it's important to visualizing how and why this initiative was created. So in mid-March of 2020, San Diego was experiencing the early impacts of COVID-19, which included seeing the impacts to other countries, communities, and quickly strategizing the best approach for our community. From March to June, businesses shut down, and we all had to closely monitor the state and county regulations to keep everyone safe. For our businesses, that meant closing their doors until more information was available and how to operate safely. These months felt excruciatingly long, and the business world, that can be devastating. In late May, early June, lucky businesses who were able to hang on there were able to start opening up and offering takeout options, but many businesses were hit hard and were unable to open. So in May of 2020, the Downtown San Diego Partnership, Circulate San Diego, and many other partners band together to write a letter to the mayor of San Diego requesting permanent approval for business reopening using the public right-of-way along the curbside. Spoiler, the letter was well received and a flexible permitting process soon established. This opened the door for businesses to reopen and operate in an alternative fashion, and for the Downtown San Diego Partnership and Circulate to work with businesses and assist with implementation. So I'm going to pause there and let Sean go into greater detail about this permitting process for making Curbside San Diego a reality by working with the City of San Diego, businesses, and local partners. Sorry, Sean, you're very quiet. Still pretty muted. No problem. I know, it sounds like you're underwater.
How does this sound now?
Much better, thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, back. Yeah, so, the easy part was really looking at ways we could utilize the public space to benefit businesses, to bring outdoor business operations to the city. The hard part is really working with the city and ordinances and regulations on how to make that happen. The good part was, everybody was kind of working towards the same end goal. Really, we were in crisis mode. How do we help these particularly small businesses in downtown San Diego survive? A lot of them were on the edge of being forced to close. So that was great to see our city partners, nonprofits, businesses, and corporations come together to kind of support each other in making this happen. So we in May and April, we're really just doing a lot of research. This wasn't only obviously impacting San Diego, this was impacting cities around the world. Some cities were a little bit ahead of us in having to deal with this. So we looked to Europe, locally to Santa Barbara, just looking to see various ways we could address the pandemic, the effects of the business closures, and help bring some relief to businesses. So one of the things we had been working with Circulate San Diego on was a pedestrian safety and mobility study in the Cortez neighborhood of downtown San Diego. That took place in 2019 and wrapped up at the end of the year, and proposed several recommendations on how to improve and enhance mobility in public spaces in Cortez. And in early 2020, we began working with Circulate on implementing various recommendations basically to enhance the pedestrian mobility. And one of those was, as Jana mentioned earlier, the Achilles pilot, which Danielle will talk about in more detail. That's kind of where we were in terms of our mode of operation, just testing ideas, trying to see what works. And then, really, if something did work, let's take it further and let's make it happen. So at this time, we started also to engage with our other nonprofit partners like the Gaslamp Quarter Association, Little Italy Association, all kind of working towards the same end goal. So we looked at street closures, looked at how do we convert parking lane spaces. So it was a really exciting time, really rewarding time. The image you see here took place in June when the Mayor Faulkner basically announced a proposal incorporating many of our recommendations that we proposed in the Curbside San Diego proposal, which was exciting. If you want to go to the next slide. In around that time, the city then introduced an online portal that was a kind of a one-stop shop for businesses to get information. In July, the City Council formalized the mayor's proposals and recommendations. City staff really worked tirelessly to take existing permit processes and to streamline them to make them adapt to the current situation. So some of the things that they looked at were parking lane. How do you convert parking lanes to allow for outdoor dining, sidewalk space, parking lots, and street closures, all through various existing permits. Right off the bat, through an executive order, businesses were allowed to utilize their sidewalk space in front of their business. The city has an existing permit for pedestrian plazas. These are parklets within the street. And so they actually adapted a permit process that you can apply for online and be approved within days. The state also was very helpful in easing regulations, particularly when it comes to alcohol management. ABC also streamlined their process to allow for alcohol beverage service within these spaces. And so we had businesses that really were able to obtain a permit within days. Really phenomenal time frame when you consider a parklet may take 3 to 4 months to get approved prior. This special events team at the city also worked to streamline their special event permit process. So we worked with them with the Gaslamp Quarter East Village Association. We had a pilot, which I'll get into, in the Columbia District, looking at street closures, and that permit fees were waived and review timeframes were reduced greatly. So that was another key aspect. And then the last thing I'll mention is parking lots. Didn't really impact downtown too much, but businesses in the city that had parking lots adjacent to them could then use that space for outdoor dining. So yeah, it was a really exciting time. I think at this point I will hand it over to Danielle to talk a little bit more about. Here's some more images as well, and Danielle, take it away.
Thanks, Sean. So as Sean mentioned, Circulate San Diego was working with the Downtown Partnership on a pedestrian mobility enhancement program in the Cortez neighborhood of downtown. And we were very fortunate that the Curbside San Diego initiative lined up well with a component of the project that we were looking to do, which was some sort of pop-up street activation. We sort of saw this as an opportunity to turn lemons into lemonade and to seize the opportunity to test this idea that it was Curbside San Diego as a pilot project with a local business. And we were working with Achilles Coffee Roaster in the Cortez neighborhood. So we first engaged the business and residents to see if this was something that they were interested in. Did they want to be the pilot for this program? We were kind of flying by the seat of our pants. We didn't know if this was going to be a success. We didn't know if we were going to get in trouble with the city for not, asking them for permission first. But we we just went headstrong and we did it. So Jana, if you want to go to the next slide, we can get a little bit more into the site plan. So what was great about this program is we worked with the Achilles business to figure out what does Curbside San Diego look like for this business. So there were a couple of different components. We took an inventory of the public right-of-way that we had to use, which was primarily the sidewalk space outside of the business. And then there was one designated on-street parking space. And this was also when the parking meters were turned off in the city. So this was a great opportunity to creatively reuse on-street parking. Given the nature of Achilles being a coffee shop, we knew that people were going to need outdoor waiting space for their pickup orders, a bit of outdoor dining. We wanted to set that up to give some people a place to enjoy their beverages, and then as well have a dedicated to-go parking space so people could come, park their cars, run in, grab their online orders, what have you. And that's been a great aspect of this Curbside San Diego project, is really working closely with businesses to think through how do they want to design their public right-of-way space and what makes sense for the type of business that it is. So that was great. And we'll move on to the next one, where I'll talk some more about the actual materials that we used. So the intent of this program was always for these projects that we designed and implement to be temporary. All of the materials that we used were easy to install and easy to remove. So the whole notion of a pilot project is we're really testing an idea and we're testing the materials. So we didn't want to spend too much money or time committing to any one type of product because we weren't sure how it was going to work. Case in point, we discovered quickly that the some of the pavement tape that we used to demarcate the on-street parking, the second a car drove over it, it ripped it up. So we were able to go back the next day, remove it, tweak the design because that wasn't quite working. But things like the sidewalk decals and the coroplast signs and some of the off asphalt aspects of the materials that we used, they're still out there today. Here's a great picture of some of the sidewalk decals that we installed. So, I mean, we're going up on 6 months now, and the material's still out there and being used by the businesses, which is great. The nature of these sort of projects in their temporary duration, it can be anything from a weekend project to something that, like Achilles, has been up for 6 months, allows a lot of creative flexibility in how these spaces are designed. And this was just a great opportunity to work with a local business to figure out what worked for them. Go to the next slide. So as I had mentioned, we weren't entirely sure whether or not this was going to be a successful project or not, and we were very fortunate to receive positive media attention from a couple of local outlets. We had 2 different news stations show up during our installation and do on-camera interviews. So it was a great real-time interaction with the media and the community, that people were really interested in this project. They were interested in seeing this in local businesses in their own neighborhood. And all around, it was a great success for a pilot program. With that, I will hand it back over to Sean, who will talk about some of the other Curbside San Diego implementations.
Thank you, Danielle. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, working with the Gaslamp Court Association around this time, we're in July, August. They're already enacting full street closures along 5th Avenue, along India Street and Little Italy. And it was businesses were very receptive, very excited. These were through the special event permit process at that time. So they were typically on weekends. So we saw them Thursday through Sunday. And they did have a significant cost associated with them in terms of the city had waived their permit fee, but there were still issues with traffic control, strike and takedown of the various railings, barricades as well. So there was still an opportunity and need to look at some longer term solutions as the pandemic continued. In the Columbia District in downtown, where we manage improvements through the parking district, we look at ways to improve the pedestrian and vehicular mobility in that area. we began looking at a way we can bring Curbside San Diego to this area. We then partnered with local brewery Carl Strauss at a location on Columbia Street. Now, this location, a lot that, in downtown, there's a lot of one-way streets. You have the trolley line. So this particular location, we could not do a full street closure. That wasn't an option. So we looked at closing 2 lanes of travel and a parking lane, leaving 1 vehicular lane open, and allowing for basically a 1,600 square foot size pedestrian plaza. That's 20 by 80 feet, so fairly large. We call it kind of a supersized parklet. And you can see some images there if you want to go to the next slide. So I can show you how that kind of worked. But there were issues. This operated Friday through Sunday. It required us to bring in dedicated traffic control personnel to put up the traffic control devices, take them down at the end of the weekend. We were fortunate to have a sponsorship from US Bank that helped support this for 8 weeks. But once again, we realized this wasn't going to be a long-term solution. So we worked with the city. How do we make this a semi-permanent space? And if you want to go to the next slide, Jana, we were able to utilize concrete barricades, K-rails. We installed them, and that space is currently up today with more of a permanent type setup. It now operates 7 days a week, and it's been a great success. And we're looking to probably keep it in place through till next summer. So we'll then look at possible permanent addition, maybe a parklet in that location. But just another way, we tested a space with different options. This one, rather than a full street closure, looking at keeping a lane of travel open. So it wasn't easy. It was a lot of back and forth with the city on how we can make this happen. But in the end, I think everybody wanted to do that had the same goal in mind, is to help businesses get through this period of time. So we're very grateful, the city working with us on this particular project. You want to go to the next slide? Yeah, so what's next? One of the things, as Danielle said, turning lemons into lemonade, we're looking at a lot of the projects we've shown are temporary in nature. But how do we make more of a permanent transformation of the public space to enhance the pedestrian environment? This is a particular need downtown. It's a dense environment. There's a lot of new residents, a lot of residential projects coming in, not a lot of public space, not a lot of open space. So we believe pedestrian plazas, parklets really offer the opportunity to provide more outdoor space for visitors, residents, workers, and so it's a very important goal to address. So one of the things we are working on now is a pilot project in 3 neighborhoods: City Center, Cortez, and Columbia, where we're looking to develop kind of a template, a parklet template that would be not permitted through the city's temporary ordinance, but this would be through their current pedestrian plaza permit process. This does have a cost. The permit's about $2,000 each. But one of the things we're hoping to get out of this is to allow businesses to utilize the permit as they haven't really done before. I believe the pedestrian plaza permit has been in place for at least 4 years. And I think in the city, there's been maybe 2 or 3 occurrences of someone actually building one. So this, I think, is an opportunity. We can look at how we can maybe relook at the pedestrian plaza permit and allow businesses to utilize it. And if they want to take 1 or 2 parking spaces in front of their business and use it for outdoor dining, I think that's a great thing. What you're looking at here are a few concepts we're working on in the various neighborhoods about, like I said, this template. So the goal of this project, of this particular pilot, is to get these 3 locations permitted for as a least cost as possible. That's design, construction. So We're working with local architect, OBR Architects in North Park. They've done a few parklets in the city in the past. And so if you want to go to the next slide, here you can see the base model. So basically, this is a 9 by 6 foot module that can be modified and adapted per neighborhood. So we can have different materials, different railings, different colors. They can be combined into two of these would basically fit into 1 parking space. 4 would be 2 parking spaces. So we're hoping that this module then, once it's approved, the city would have seen this type of construction. It would streamline the approval process, and also we're hoping to keep the cost of construction of these 2 modules together to about $10,000, where a typical parklet could cost anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000. So we're really hoping this can be a model that can be replicated by businesses, and it could be more of a longer term solution, be permitted to last beyond the pandemic. And yeah, I think last thing I'll mention is just a couple of lessons we've learned. Is really it was key early on to work with our local businesses. We were out when there was really no one downtown. They were boarded up. You know, we were speaking with them, getting their needs, and then conveying that to the city. And that's, I think the city then was able to understand what the needs were and adapt their existing permits to accommodate this pandemic situation. So and then, yeah, you've heard it a couple times, but yeah, make the best of the situation. We're, you know, could be looking at some long-term changes to our public spaces, our streetscapes, through the, you know, looking at through this pandemic. So, and I think it's opened up a lot of other people's eyes that may not have realized the valuable space that we have in downtown, and maybe it shouldn't all be dedicated to vehicles. Maybe we can have more space for people. So I think that's the last slide for me. I'll hand it to Danielle.
Thanks, John. And just piggybacking on what you said, I think you hit the nail on the head that one of the great things that came out of this Curbside San Diego project and continues to come out of it is it's really bringing this idea of urban design and repurposing public space for the greater good to the forefront of people's collective consciousness. People like us designers at Circulate and the Downtown Partnership, we're in this urban design headspace all the time, and it's been really great to move that into the public, you know, collective knowledge through this program, and you know, to a larger extent as a result of COVID. So that has been a big takeaway and positive thing that came out of this program. Also, this highlighted not only the Achilles project, but the overall efforts that the Downtown San Diego Partnership has been undertaking, the importance of collaboration and working with partners, both nonprofit and business entities, and, you know, resident groups, community advocacy organizations, to really band together and leverage resources to do these sorts of projects in such a short amount of time. We do recognize that, you know, not every business can set up a permanent platform outside, and so it's just really all about working with the local businesses and community to figure out what we can do, what's the budget, how long do we want these sort of treatments to be up, and being flexible and creative in what we're doing. You know, again, as Sean mentioned, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in the collective consciousness as we move through COVID and then beyond COVID, and what that looks like for downtown San Diego. So really excited to have been at the ground level of this program and to see where it goes in the future. So with that, I will hand it back to Jana.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I appreciate all of your insight, and we have done a nice job of leaving a pretty healthy discussion period. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see our faces. And then I'm going to, sorry, technology. Let me exit this. There we are. Okay. And then I'm going to pull up to see what questions we've been getting in. But to start us off, I do want to say how much I appreciate the transparency from both speakers, that challenges were met, and just being very honest that that they happen, and how you pivot and handle those situations, because it feels like that's sort of a metaphor for COVID, is we're all just kind of like figuring it out as things are presented to us. And I think in urban design and streetscape, there's so much opportunity, but we have to just try something and move on from that. So I think what you've established well is that it's still actively growing. I think East Street is a great example, and seeing what Little Italy does. There's just a lot of great examples around us. And so perhaps as a joint organization, we will absolutely make sure that we share the progress so that this education continues. So just to start off with a few questions, we have one here. What was the biggest obstacle with the project, and how did you overcome it? And then a follow-up is, what partnerships were vital? I would say this could be for either of you, but if you both want to take a stab at it.
I can take a first crack at it, Sean. I mean, the partnership between Circulate and the Downtown Partnership was absolutely vital in doing this project, not just as an initiative to get it off the ground, but in implementing the pilot project at the Achilles Coffee Shop. And of course, our partnership with both Charge, which is the residents group in Cortez, and Achilles as the business who was willing to let us test something out in front of their coffee shop. I would say the biggest obstacle for us was really thinking through the types of materials that we wanted to use. We were very cautious to make sure that what we put on the ground was going to stick around. I had mentioned the issue with the pavement tape. Luckily, we were able to go and fix that the next day, but we wanted to make sure that our efforts were in good faith, and everything was as we intended it to be, both in terms of quality of design, quality of material, that sort of thing. So I think from our perspective, that was a big obstacle.
You're on mute, Sean.
Yeah, I say funding. We were, and it'll continue to be an obstacle. We were lucky to get a sponsorship for some of our projects from U.S. Bank. We did but we had an existing project. We were working with Circulate, and we were able to pivot and use some of the, change the project to address the pandemic. But there's only so much you can do with limited funding. In the Columbia District, the pilot projects I did mention, we were able to do that. Working with the parking meter revenue, so that's been a help. But we'd love to expand it. But yeah, if we can find, we're always looking for more sponsors, and that's definitely an ongoing issue, because there's a lot of need out there for sure.
That's great. Thank you for that. And just, I want to plug Christina had a comment, but I'm going to flip it into a question. Her comment was, there is an upside to COVID. Temporary things can become permanent, and they are indeed improvements. It's a better way to use public space. Sean, I just want to maybe tie back into your discussion about the templates that can be used, and so what that process looks like with becoming permanent in the future. Have you guys discussed that, what that process looks like?
Yeah, so I mean, it's evolving. We definitely will make the template available, so to businesses, and the idea is that you'll have the base template design. Each space adjacent to a business is going to be unique, whether it's the slope of the street, the height of the curb, there's street furniture. So there are going to be some costs to modify it, but the goal is to kind of reduce the costs it would normally take to implement a parklet. So that's design. On the design side and the construction side, one of the things we do need to have further conversations with the city about is on the permitting side. Currently, the pedestrian plaza permit only apply, it's utilized for public's use only. So you wouldn't be able to have like table service at a parklet. You could use it if you had a coffee shop. People can go sit and have coffee or take out. which is something have already been looking on at a couple of other pedestrian plazas we've been working on prior to the pandemic. So yeah, we hopefully, beyond the pandemic, this is an opportunity that we can't say, hey, maybe we should re-look at this permit. It hasn't been utilized as much as we'd like. Maybe we can allow more private use of these spaces.
Excellent, thanks. So some of these have been easy, but now I have a hard one. And maybe you were anticipating it, but the governor did come out with information today and making some changes that may impact businesses and potentially Curbside San Diego. So just curious, what happens now in that circumstance that businesses are affected in a way that impacts outdoor dining? Any guidance there?
I think Danielle, I'll hand it up to her, but Killy's Coffee, I think, is an excellent example of takeout and how you can utilize that project and replicate it.
Yeah, and I think that this is really like a microcosm of this whole thing in general. Like, things are changing so rapidly that on one hand, we kind of just have to take the steady Eddie route and just say, okay, let's implement these curbside treatments. The nature of how they will use will likely change based on the public health regulations and things opening and closing. But the overall intent of Curbside San Diego, to me, is relevant and stays strong the entire time, whether or not there's indoor dining or outdoor dining or takeout or like whatever the regulations are. But the overall essence of the program holds true.
I think that you bring up a really good point in that through this process, as professionals, we're very mindful that there's lots of changing regulations and with things closing and then opening again. And in no way is this program trying to be a rebel against what the county is saying. And I really trying to be as complimentary and supportive as possible, but we understand that there has to be adjustments to be compliant. So thank you for that point. So what do you see as continuing efforts for the future that have worked very well on the pilot and what has not worked? And maybe to add to that, I do like that we started with Achilles and we talked about what happened there. And then we looked at Carl Strauss and now East Street. What are some things that you were able to tease from the pilot project that you enjoyed or maybe you wouldn't do in the future? I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I can hop in on this. I think one of the great parts of this program is that we've been able to like snowball our successes. So Achilles was the first one, and then we could say, hey, Carl Strauss, we did something similar to Achilles and it worked out pretty well. And, the material is still there and people are using it. And now we're going to East Street and we can point to the work that we did at Achilles and Carl Strauss. So it's this nice, domino effect of, hey, we can point to how this has worked. Let's get more people, more businesses interested in it. And thanks to Achilles for being that guinea pig and just letting us test this out. I see that being a great benefit and continuing this work into the future. I guess in terms of things that maybe haven't gone so well, I think that Sean spoke to it. Funding is a big issue and making sure that that's in place, whether it's through partner organizations like us or businesses themselves who are fronting the costs for setting up a platform or whatever it might be outside of their business. And working through the permitting process, which it is a great improvement from what it was, but it's still paperwork. There's still a process that has to go through. So just working with businesses to keep morale up as they go through that, I think is important.
Yeah, and I'll just to add on, as far as if you go downtown today, you'll see businesses that took the initiative to build their own parklets. They saw the value. And I think one of the things we, as kind of a business improvement district and business advocacy organization, I think there's some value into the design, into being really focused on what it looks like. And so it's not a hodgepodge of these, various parklets. So a lot of the businesses on East Street we're working with, Carl Strauss a couple businesses in Cortez and in Columbia as well. They see the value. So one of the things we're working on is to make sure there is a consistent design. Each of these parklets are designed with the neighborhood in mind. So there is that detail, and I think something that will be long lasting. And so that directly came from a lot of the businesses. Like they wanted the design to incorporate kind of their aesthetic. So and then something that didn't work but was very valuable and needed was kind of using that special event permit process. It was expensive to have to all the ancillary needs. The permit and the fee it was great that was the fee was waived and the permit process was reduced, but the other costs it wasn't a long-term solution, but it was a stopgap that worked. But we're now at the point where we're developing these other types of installations that I think are being more of a permanent, semi-permanent solution.
Yeah, and that sets up well. We have one more question that we received, but kind of before I get there, a transition between that is recognizing that these business owners that have been working with have a lot to worry about. And the design of a space on their curbside is not only something that they've never done before, guaranteed, but that's not the top on their list necessarily, even though there's a total benefit with supporting their business in the recovery. And that's so understandable. You don't start a business thinking about you're going to go into a pandemic and what are you going to do to your curbside. And so with that, our last question is, how are the needs of the business operations? How are they met, and how are the particular businesses, how does that influence the design and what happens along the streetscape? And one more thing I'll add is, as much as this could be a cookie cutter solution, like I think having the prefab parklet is fantastic because you're able to design with it what you want, and it provides that foundation, but what you put on top of it is able to be unique and specific to the business. So how does design flourish in that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, the needs of the business were paramount in the design and everything that is about Curbside San Diego. We can't be an assistance to the business unless we understand what their needs are. With Achilles, it was a somewhat simple business type to use as our pilot program because a coffee shop is pretty basic. You go, you order your coffee, you leave. There wasn't too much going on in terms of needing outdoor dining, table service, that sort of thing. But working with businesses closely to understand what those needs are is critical for this being successful. And just adding on to what you said, Jane, I think it is really interesting to look at, there's two sides to this. There is like the modular component of a platform or the certain types of materials that we use, the sources, that sort of thing. And then you take those modular components and you customize them for not only the location, but also the business. So it's kind of a balance of both of those things.
Yeah, you're right, Jane. We're working with an architect now, and we're able to take a lot off the plate of these businesses where, they're trying to survive. So, the designs that kind of I showed earlier really reflect the business that they're adjacent to. And so, and they've been floored, like, wow, this really, you guys got it. And so it's just great to see that, very rewarding. So the more we can, like I said, our goal is to make it more widespread and to be able to allow more businesses to do this. So it'd be great to see this pilot be a success.
Yes, agreed. So we will make a commitment to making sure that information gets out there and for people to see. We'll see if we get any more questions before the end of our period, but I do have just one more item to share, and being very cognizant that this panel is about COVID and it's a very serious thing that we're all dealing with in different ways right now. There is a silver lining a little bit in urban design because it has been brought up a bit that all of us as designers and planners love creating places for people. Cars are not our priority when it comes to the streetscape. So this truly is kind of this opportunity to provide a visual example of how our streets can look different and operate differently. And that's where the discussion of long-term change is. This situation created that as an opportunity. So not so much a question, but maybe just any other plugs from an urban design standpoint and streetscape design standpoint, what our opportunities are from here and how we will continue to advocate for these streets keep staying for people and operating for people.
That's a great question, Jana. And I hope that one of the things that comes out of this Curbside San Diego program is a whole new group of urban design advocates, be that business owners in downtown and across San Diego, and have these people be the ones who are fighting for change and things like complete street design and working to make downtowns more livable and, you know, more functional for everyone. And I think that from what we've experienced over the past 6 months, all signs point to that being the wave of the future.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you know, prior to 2020, you would talk about some of the things we're talking about now, and it would like, you'd be kind of maybe laughed out of the room. What are you, crazy? And now we have businesses that they get it, they love it. And so I hope Danielle's right that they're going to be advocates in the future. I think I mean, you know, as the Downtown San Diego Partnership, we promote the economic vitality of downtown. We want to see downtown thrive. Our members, we see the value in dedicating space, more space for pedestrian, bicycle use, as opposed to vehicles, because you know, our public, like I said, downtown. Why do people want to live and work downtown? It's because it's vital, it's active. And so the more space you have for, you know, walking, enjoying the environment, I think it's definitely an economic argument to be made that it's, you know, the front porch and how you treat it is really important as far as spurring the revival of downtown, the continued revival of downtown. So yeah, I'm excited. You're right. It's been a tough year, but I think that is a silver lining that we can look forward to.
That was great. Yeah, thank you both for that. We don't have any more questions in the chat, but I do want to take this opportunity to kind of wrap us up and just state that this panel presentation is about Curbside San Diego, which focuses on downtown San Diego. But please use us as resources if you know a community, if you know a business all throughout the county. We're still here as a support system, and we want to be able to share our knowledge and experiences. So please feel free to reach out. What I'm going to do at this time is share a final screen of the presentation so that you have our emails. If you'd like to email us, share that. But I do want to thank our speakers, and Sean and Danielle. Thank you, Angelica. She did a lot of the behind the scenes work, and Zach from the county, and just the whole county team in the Live Well conference. We really appreciate you having us. And with that, I think we're a wrap.
Great job, Jana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I'll leave this slide up for a while, but we have reached the end of our presentation.
Nice job.